The Kraken awakens ***. No one remembered the last time the Kraken woke from the deep. But the sea remembered. Waves grew violent near the shores of planet Thalassa. Fishermen vanished. Sensors broke. And something massive moved below, the alien cities that floated on water began to shake in fear. They sent patrol ships to investigate, but none returned. The Royal Guards declared a level 10 threat and pulled back all troops. And in the middle of that panic, one human stepped forward. His name was Cole, a simple fisherman from Earth. He had no army, no rank, and no special bloodline. But when he heard the word Kraken, he didn't flinch. Instead, he looked out at the waves and said, "I'll go." The alien council laughed at him. Some called him mad, some called him brave, and most ignored him. But not the two princesses. Syria, the older daughter of Queen Arastra, was watching from her ship. She had trained in battle since childhood and won 10 duels in the sky rings. She narrowed her eyes and said, "He has no fear." Vila, her younger sister, stood beside her quietly. She was a thinker, a scholar who studied ancient sea creatures. She whispered, "He might be the only one who survives." The two sisters looked at each other, then at the human standing alone on the dock. They made a silent agreement between them. Whoever this man was, he was not ordinary, and if he lived, he would be more than just a hero. He would be a prize that night. Cole packed only what he needed: a harpoon made of carbon fiber, a pressure suit, and a simple necklace with Earth's flag. The moonlight shone on his face as he stepped onto a small vessel. The alien guards tried to stop him, warning him the Kraken had crushed steel submarines. Cole only smiled. "Then I won't use steel." As his ship vanished into the fog, whispers spread across the capital. "The human is going to die," one voice said, "or become legend." Another replied, "Deep in the ocean, far from lights and sound, the Kraken stirred." Its body was longer than a city block, with tentacles that could wrap around warships. It had not been seen for centuries. But its mind was sharp. It felt the ripples in the water and knew a challenger approached. Not a fleet, not a bomb, but one small boat with one warm heartbeat. And for the first time in 1,000 years, the Kraken was curious. Cole didn't have sonar or advanced scanners. He trusted the sea, his instincts, and a strange feeling that the creature wasn't just a monster. He slowed his ship as the water grew colder. Suddenly, the waves stopped moving. Everything became still, like the ocean was holding its breath. Then it appeared. A dark shape rose beneath him, bigger than anything he had ever seen. Eyes like glowing suns stared at him through the water, and then the surface exploded. Tentacles crashed onto the deck, wind howled, and alarms screamed. But Cole didn't run. He stood firm and held up his hand, palm open. "Easy," he said gently. "2." The surprise of everyone watching through distant satellites. The Kraken stopped, one of its massive eyes lowered to meet the humans. In that moment, something ancient passed between them, understanding, not fear, not hate, just silence. Cole dropped his harpoon and walked to the edge of the deck. "I'm not here to kill you," he said. "I'm here because no one else would come." The Kraken tilted its head, as if considering his words. Far away, in a hidden observation room, Princess Vala leaned forward in shock. "He's not attacking," she whispered. Syria frowned. "He's speaking to it." The two sisters watched the impossible unfold. Cole placed his hand on the edge of the railing, waiting, and the Kraken did something no one expected. It gently touched the ship with one tentacle. Not to crush it, but to listen. Back in the capital, the alien generals shouted over each other, demanding missiles and drones, but Queen Arastra raised her hand, silencing the room. "Let him try," she said. "Let the humans speak." On the dark sea, Cole sat down on the deck and said, "Tell me your story." The Kraken blinked slowly, as if it understood, and the sea began to glow with bioluminescent lights. Cole's ship drifted into the depths, carried by something unseen. And for the first time in alien history, the Kraken did not destroy. It invited. The hunt had changed. The human was no longer prey. He was now part of the legend. The sea trial, most believed Cole was dead. Even the bravest warriors said no creature like the Kraken could be reasoned with. But 3 days later, his ship floated back into harbor. It was scratched and battered. But Cole was standing on deck, soaked in salt and silence, with a strange glow in his eyes. He spoke to no one, simply looked at the crowd and said, "It listens." The aliens gasped. Some shouted that it was a trick, but Queen Arastra ordered a full council meeting. Cole stood before nobles and generals, his skin sunburnt and his clothes torn. "I need to return," he said. "It's not finished talking." The council laughed in disbelief. "You're not a diplomat," one alien barked. "You're not a soldier either." Cole only nodded. "That's why it listened." Far above in the royal viewing box, Syria clenched her jaw. This human had just embarrassed half the empire and didn't even raise his voice. Vala, sitting beside her, smiled quietly. "He speaks like water," she whispered, soft but powerful. Syria crossed her arms. "He better be more than words." That night, Cole prepared for his second journey. This time, he brought a translator device, a drone camera, and one question in his heart. Why had the Kraken spared him? And what did it want in return? As he set off, 2 sleek royal submarines followed him from a distance. Syria piloted one without permission. Vala sat in the other with books, maps, and scanned legends. They didn't speak to each other, but both were drawn by the same mystery. The sea was calm that evening, but beneath it, the pressure of something ancient grew heavier. The Kraken waited, resting near a broken temple deep beneath the waves. Its glowing eyes watched Cole's approach with interest. Cole dove into the depths. In his suit, guided by the drone, the deeper he went, the colder it became. And yet he felt no fear, only purpose. He followed old carvings on stone walls, spiraling downward toward the temple doors. His flashlight lit up symbols in a language no one had spoken for centuries. Above him, Syria whispered through her mic. "He's going in alone," Vala replied from her own sub. "That temple is cursed." Still, neither stopped him. At the temple gate, Cole reached out and pressed his palm to a panel. The stone rumbled and opened. Inside was a massive chamber with glowing orbs floating in midair. In the center stood a plinth with a cracked heartstone. Cole approached slowly, unsure what would happen. As he touched the heartstone, a voice rang out, not in sound, but in feeling. The Kraken's thoughts entered his mind. Flashes of war, betrayal, and chains. It had once served the rulers of Thalassa as a protector, but they feared it, tricked it, and sealed it away. Now it wanted justice, not revenge. Cole stepped back, shaken, but calm. "I will carry your truth," he said, "but you must promise to protect, not destroy." Outside the temple, sensors went wild. The Kraken rose from the shadows and slowly circled the temple. It did not attack, but it watched Cole with ancient eyes. Syria prepared her weapons, unsure if she would need to strike. Vala held her breath, tears forming in her eyes from the raw emotion she felt through the monitors. Suddenly, alarms blared. Across all channels, an enemy battleship had entered Thalassa space. The rival house of Karen, hearing rumors of the Kraken's return, had sent a fleet to capture it. Cole looked up as the ocean trembled again, not from the Kraken, but from weapons above. He turned toward the creature and said, "If you fight now, they'll fear you again." The Kraken hovered still, listening. Then, with a deep vibration, it released a pulse of light into the water. The heartstone in the temple glowed, and a hidden path opened behind Cole. He walked through it and surfaced hours later in a hidden lagoon, the same one the Kraken once called home. There, waiting for him on the rocks, were both princesses. Syria stepped forward and handed him a blade. "If you're going to defend this world, you'll need more than kindness." Vala held out a scroll. "And knowledge," she added softly. "You'll need that too." Cole smiled and accepted both. As the twin suns rose over the ocean, the world had changed. The Kraken had not been slain. It had been heard, and only one human had dared to listen. The monster's mind asterisk, the ocean was calm again, but Cole knew better. Silence didn't mean safety, not when a creature as old as the Kraken was awake. He stood at the edge of the lagoon where it had left him, staring out into the still water. Beneath the surface, something ancient watched him in return. But it wasn't hatred, and it wasn't hunger. It was thought. Somewhere deep below, the Kraken was thinking. Syria paced behind him on the sand, frustrated by his stillness. "You're wasting time," she said. "You could have struck when its guard was down." Cole didn't look back. "That wasn't its guard," he said calmly. "It was trust." Vala sat nearby, cross-legged, reviewing old sea scrolls she had brought from the royal archives. She spoke without lifting her eyes. "Legends say the Kraken once spoke in dreams." Cole turned slightly. "Then maybe it still can." He dove into the lagoon with no gear, only the stone the Kraken had shown him. It pulsed with a blue glow as he sank deeper. Pulled not by gravity, but by something calling. A current wrapped around him like a guide. Syria grabbed her blade and prepared to follow. But Vala stopped her. "Let him go," she said softly. "He's not going to fight it. He's going to listen." Cole felt no pressure on his chest, no panic in his lungs. Instead, the deeper he went, the more he remembered, but the memories weren't his. He saw the world through the Kraken's eyes, huge cities built over sacred waters. He saw the creature rise in defense of the weak and be praised as a god. Then feared, then betrayed, chains wrapped around its body. Screams echoed through the deep, and darkness, cold, and loneliness followed, until a single voice spoke again. His voice. Cole opened his eyes to find himself not in water, but in a glowing chamber made of coral and crystal. The Kraken was there, but not as a monster. It appeared as a giant shifting form of light and shadow, neither beast nor machine, but something older. It did not speak with sound, but with images and emotion. A question filled the space. "Why did you return?" Cole replied with his heart. "Because I believe you were wronged." The chamber pulsed, and the Kraken showed him a map, a hidden sea temple where it had been bound long ago. In its core rested a second heartstone, cracked and poisoned by alien sorcery. "If I retrieve it, what happens then?" Cole asked without words. "Balance," came the answer. Meanwhile, above the surface, Syria stood at the lagoon's edge with growing worry. "He's been down too long," she said, eyes scanning the water. Vala placed a hand on her sister's arm. "Give him time." But Syria's jaw was tight. Time is not a gift in war. Suddenly, the water rippled, glowing symbols lit the shoreline, and Cole rose from the depths, holding the Kraken's mark in his hand, a glowing coral emblem. He stepped onto land, dripping but calm, and looked at both princesses. "I have to dive again," he said. "But this time, deeper than anyone has gone. And if I don't return," he added, "tell the world it didn't kill me. I chose to try." Syria's voice dropped. "You're insane." Vala stood, eyes locked on his. "You're brave." Later that night, they sat around a low fire near the sand, preparing supplies. Vala gave Cole an ancient breathing crystal, a relic never tested by humans. Syria handed him a forged blade etched with sea runes. "We don't agree on many things," Syria said, "but on this we do." "Don't die," Vala whispered, looking at the stars. "Not yet." Cole nodded silently, the Kraken's mark pulsing in his palm. In the morning, he would enter the Temple of Bones, a place lost to time, cursed by myth, and guarded by death itself. But it was the only way to free the Kraken's poisoned past, and earn the trust of the beast that had chosen not to destroy him. Not because he was the strongest, but because he was the only one who asked why. The trial was no longer about courage alone. Now it was about understanding. And Cole, the simple human, was the first in 1,000 years willing to understand the monster's mind. The Temple of Bones. There were places even the ocean feared. The Temple of Bones was one of them, buried deep beneath the trenches of Thalassa's oldest sea. It was where warriors vanished and legends ended. No one had returned from it, not alive. Not whole, not ever, but Cole swam toward it with steady arms and a calm heartbeat. Because this was not a hunt for glory, it was a mission of trust. Above him, 2 stealth submarines followed in silence. Syria in one, gripping her sword's hilt as if ready to leap into war. Violet in the other, whispering forgotten prayers from the scrolls of the Sea Watchers. They weren't supposed to be there, but neither could stay away. The human had made his choice, and somehow it felt like theirs too. Cole reached the mouth of the temple. A massive gate carved into the side of a dead reef. The door opened with a deep rumble as he placed the Kraken's mark against the coral wall. Inside was darkness, but it wasn't empty. Bones of ancient sea beasts curled along the walls like frozen storms. Traps blinked to life, pulses of light and sound triggered by breath. He moved slowly, carefully, watching patterns in the walls shift like the beat of a sleeping creature. This was not a ruin, it was alive. And it was testing him. A beam of energy shot from the ceiling. He ducked, slid, and rolled behind a broken pillar. A blade of water slashed across the floor. He leapt just in time, landing beside a cracked statue. Syria watched through her drone feed, whispering curses as he barely dodged each death trap. Vala's voice came through her private channel. "He's not just brave," she said softly. "He's learning." At the heart of the temple, Cole found the second heartstone, pulsing weakly, corrupted with purple veins. He reached for it, but before he could touch it, the temple reacted. The bones around him rose, forming a guardian made of ribs and coral in rage. It struck without warning, claws slicing through the water like lightning. Cole dodged the first blow, blocked the second with his blade, but the third threw him hard against a wall. His chest burned, his vision blurred, but he stood. He had faced worse than pain. He gripped the Kraken's mark and held it high. "I don't come to steal," he shouted. "I come to fix what was broken." The guardian paused, head tilting, its glowing eyes flickering. Then it lunged again. But this time, Cole didn't move. He let it come and placed the Kraken's mark on its chest as it struck. Light exploded outward, swallowing the guardian in white flame. When it cleared, the heartstone had changed. The corruption was gone, and in its place, a steady golden pulse. But Cole had collapsed to the ground, bleeding, far above. Syria had already launched her escape pod, ignoring orders. She dove into the sea like a falling comet, reaching the temple in minutes. She found him unconscious, drifting near the altar. "I told you not to die," she growled, pulling him into her arms. Vala arrived moments later. Following a glowing current the Kraken had sent, she placed her palm on Cole's chest, the ancient breathing crystal still glowing in his pocket. "He's alive," she whispered, "but he gave everything." Together, they brought him back through the temple path, the sea parting around them like it remembered their names. As they surfaced in the hidden lagoon, the Kraken rose from the deep. Not roaring, not threatening, but silent. It looked at Cole's broken body and lowered its head. It understood the price of truth. And now it owed the human a debt. On the shore, as the sun rose behind the waves, Cole opened his eyes slowly. Syria knelt beside him, soaked in seawater and anger. "You scared me," she said, not looking at him. "Don't do it again." Vala smiled and pressed something into his hand, a small stone shaped like a heart. "It's yours," she whispered. "You earned it." Cole looked from one princess to the other, confused and weak but smiling. "I didn't mean to make a scene," he mumbled. Syria rolled her eyes. "Too late for that, sea brain." The Kraken remained in the water, glowing softly, watching the trio as the new tide rolled in. The temple had tested Cole's strength. The Kraken had tested his heart, and both had found something worth respecting. But neither knew that something else had begun that day, something far more dangerous than monsters love. The alien crown trial asterisk. The news shattered the empire like a storm over glass. A human had entered the Temple of Bones and returned, alive, breathing, and holding the purified heartstone. In the last 500 years, no alien warrior, scholar, or priest had done it. But Cole had, and worse for the nobles, he wasn't even one of them. The High Council gathered in the royal dome, voices echoing off crystal walls. He defiled a sacred place, barked a senator from House Griffin. He awakened the Kraken and brought it to our waters. Spat another, but Queen Arastra remained quiet, her sharp eyes fixed on the man standing before her throne. Cole wore no armor, no robes, just a worn jacket still wet with ocean salt. Behind him stood Syria, her face hard with fury, and beside her was Vala, serene but unshaken. Both princesses had come willingly publicly to defend him. That alone had split the court in whispers and scandal. One princess backing the human was a disgrace. Two was a declaration. Cole spoke with calm. I didn't enter the temple for power. He said, I went because something old asked me to listen. A silence fell, thick and uncomfortable. Then General Kor stepped forward, his voice heavy with disgust. And what did this something promise you, Earthman? Cole looked at him without blinking. Nothing, he said. But it showed me how your ancestors chained a guardian and buried the truth. That hit the chamber like thunder. Many nobles stood, shouting denials, some calling for his arrest. But before anyone could move, Syria stepped forward, drawing her sword and driving it into the floor. I fought beside this human, she said. He bled for us when none of you would. Vala raised her voice next, holding the ancient scrolls of the Kraken's pact. And I will swear by the stars. He speaks truth, the sea itself confirmed. The queen raised a hand in silence. Returned, she rose from her throne slowly, her cloak dragging like waves behind her. Coal of earth, she said. You have broken laws, defied our warnings, and walked into places none dared go. But, she continued, you have also done what we could not. She turned to the heartstone placed in a crystal dish beside her. It pulsed softly, responding only to Cole's presence. Then let him face the trial of the crown, said an old voice from the shadows. The room gasped. It was Lord Ashen, the queen's uncle and keeper of the law. Syria stiffened. That trial hasn't been invoked in centuries. It is his right, Ashen said coldly. Let him stand before the voice of the deep and be judged. Cole didn't understand, but Vala touched his arm and whispered, it means the Kraken will decide. That night, the ceremony took place at the Great Sea Gate, a place where royalty once made pacts with the ocean. The Kraken surfaced slowly, its massive form lit by lanterns floating on the water. It said nothing. But Cole stepped forward and held out the heartstone. I bring this back, he said, not as proof, but as peace. The Kraken's eyes glowed once, then turned toward the two princesses. Syria stepped up, her voice firm. If you reject him, you reject me too. Vala followed. And me, she said. Because this man is what we need, not as a symbol, but as truth. The crowd gasped. In their world, love was political. Mating was arranged. Two royal daughters offering themselves for a human. And at the same time was unheard of. The Kraken released a deep hum that shook the waves. Then it touched each of them gently. Syria, Vala, and Cole. Its mind brushed theirs with a single message, unity through choice. The queen, standing high above on the palace balcony, gave a quiet nod. The crown accepts the trial, she said. Let it be known that Cole of Earth is now guardian of the deep. And if he accepts their hands, she added, let no law deny him. That night, across the empire, torches were lit in confusion and celebration. The Kraken returned to the deep, satisfied, and the human, once called foolish, now stood at the edge of something impossible. Not just legend, but love. Two princesses, once divided by duty and destiny, now stood side by side, offering their hands, not in surrender, but in hope. And Cole, humble as always, said the only thing he could think of. I didn't plan for any of this, he whispered. Syria smirked. Good, she said. Because now you belong to us. The human's choice. The offer wasn't spoken in secret. It was made under the stars, in front of half the empire, with the ocean as their witness. Two princesses stood on either side of the human, and both had just offered their hearts. Cole didn't know if he should laugh, run, or bow, so he did none. Of those things, he simply looked at them and whispered. "Why me?" Vala smiled gently, brushing sea salt from her cheek. "Because you did what no one else even tried." Syria crossed her arms, her voice sharp. "Because you bled for something that wasn't yours, and made it yours anyway." Cole glanced at the roaring crowd behind them, filled with aliens whispering, cheering, and judging. The choice wasn't just between two women. It was between walking back into the quiet life he had known, or stepping into history. He exhaled slowly. "I don't want to divide you." Syria stepped closer. "We're not divided," she said. "Not anymore." Vala nodded. "You didn't split us," she whispered. "You brought us together." And then, without waiting for approval or ceremony, both sisters reached for his hands. And for the first time in the Empire's long, cold history, love was not decided by bloodlines or strategy. It was decided by choice. The next morning, the sun rose over Thalassa, and a strange quiet settled across the capital. Not fear, not silence, but respect. 3 figures stood on the high balcony of the palace, overlooking the ocean. Cole, dressed in ceremonial robes that didn't quite fit, stood between his 2 brides. He didn't know how to act like royalty, and he didn't care to learn. What mattered was that the Kraken swam peacefully again, that the warships had retreated, and that peace, real peace, had begun to bloom. In the court below, Queen Arastra stepped forward, her voice echoing across the square. "Let it be known," she announced, "that Guardian Cole of Earth now stands beside the crown, not as a symbol of conquest, but as a bridge between our kind and all others." The crowd bowed, but Syria grinned. "Try not to trip on your new status," she whispered to Cole. Vala chuckled softly. "Or your cape." Cole looked at both and said, "I miss my boat." Later that evening, they returned to the shore, where everything began. The lagoon was quiet, glowing under the twin moons. The Kraken's eyes blinked beneath the waves like twin lanterns. Cole stepped forward and knelt in the surf, placing both hands in the water. "I'm not a king," he said. "I'm not a warrior, and I'm no saint. But I promise this," he added. "I'll protect this sea like it's my own." A soft vibration passed through the sand, and the Kraken rose once more, not in fury, not in warning, but in blessing. It raised 2 tentacles and touched his shoulders gently, then retreated to the deep, leaving behind a trail of glowing blue light. Syria and Vala stepped beside him, their hands resting on his back. "You tamed the sea," Syria whispered. "No," Cole replied. "I listened to it." Word spread across systems that the Kraken had chosen a human, and that 2 alien princesses had given their hearts not out of duty, but desire. Other species began sending envoys to learn what had changed, what force had made the Empire soften. But the answer was simple. It wasn't power, or war, or fear. It was a man who dared to care, who faced a monster without drawing his sword, and loved without asking for anything in return. Cole had not won the Kraken by force. He had won by understanding, and in doing so, he had gained more than a title. He had found a home, and now he wasn't alone. The Kraken's pact asterisk. Before Cole, the Kraken bowed to no one. Now, it waited for him every morning at the edge of the lagoon. Not as a beast, not as a weapon, but as a guardian keeping its silent promise. It had chosen him, not for strength, but for the kind of courage that could not be seen with eyes. And now, it was ready to seal its final bond. The Kraken's pact had not been spoken in 1,000 years. It was an oath older than kings, older than thrones. It required no blood, no war, only trust. Cole stood at the cliff overlooking the sea, his arms crossed, wind pushing at his hair. Behind him stood Syria, wrapped in her battle shawl, eyes fierce as ever. Vala stood beside her, holding a scroll glowing with blue light, her voice quiet and steady. The ocean began to churn, slow and wide, as the Kraken rose from the deep, not towering this time but calm, level with the cliff. Its glowing eyes fixed on Cole, Syria stepped forward first. "You already have us," she said, "but this is bigger." Vala nodded. This is about legacy. Cole didn't like words like that. He didn't want statues, didn't care for songs. But when he looked down at the creature that had once crushed cities and now waited for his word, he understood. This wasn't about what he wanted anymore. It was about what came next. He stepped to the edge of the cliff, removed the heartstone from his chest, and held it high. "I give this freely," he said, "not as master, not as ruler, but as a friend." The heartstone flashed once, and the sea exploded with light. The sky turned silver, and from the water rose towers of crystal and coral, ancient structures built by the first ones, awakened by his voice. The pact had been accepted. The Kraken lowered its head, touching the cliffside gently, and in that moment, the ocean swore to protect not just Cole, but all who followed his path. Back in the capital, the queen stood at her balcony in silence. Below her, crowds gathered, watching the sky change, the sea glow, and the towers rise. And for the first time in generations, fear turned into awe. Cole returned to the city not as a conqueror, but as a builder. He did not take a throne. He built a home on the sea, a home with 2 chairs on the porch, one for Syria, one for Vala, and a long table where travelers came, not for politics, but for stories. Syria taught swordplay to orphans who wanted to protect, not to hurt. Vala opened a library where anyone, no matter their planet, could learn about the Kraken and the truth. Beneath history and Cole, he fished, he taught, he listened. Sometimes he'd wake at night to find the Kraken floating silently offshore, as if watching over his strange new family. He would wave, and the creature would disappear into the deep. That was enough. Other races came, some with gifts, some with weapons. Those who came with peace were welcomed. Those who came with threat were met by waves that swallowed ships whole. The Kraken never spoke, but it never needed to. Its actions told the story that Earth's soft-spoken son had done what empires could not. He had tamed a monster, won 2 hearts, and changed a world, not through violence, but through respect. And long after he was gone, legends would still begin the same way. They say only one being ever faced the Kraken. The old storytellers would whisper to children by the fire, and he didn't come with a sword, they'd add. He came with questions.